came back down, and we kind of had this idea we'd do tips from the old timer. I guess I'm the old timer. Anyway, yeah, I thought I'd go over a few things over the years that I've found to work out pretty good, and they were kind of cheap, and they worked out well. And when you're involved in this hobby, you got to keep looking for things like that so you can buy KD couplers and all those other neat things. One of my ideas was coal loads. Here at Cincinnati and Southern, there's a lot of coal trains, and they're long coal trains. And you go to the hobby shop and you could buy a couple coal loads for $5. These were 12 cents a piece. You go to the hardware store and you buy emery cloth, and you cut it out just a little bit wider than the hopper you're going to put it in, and that lets you bow it up just a little bit, and then you drop it right down in there. And again, it's not perfect, but my coal trains all look pretty good. I like the way they look. So there's a quick and easy way to make coal loads. And if you want to use that idea, you're certainly welcome to. The next thing I kind of came up with was I like super elevated curves. I think super elevated curves make the trains look nice, and of course the real 12-inch to the foot gauge, they used them all the time, more so where passenger trains were involved. But to super elevate my curves, underneath the cork, I would take just hardware string like you wrap a package up with. And I would take these and lay it along the outside, and then just tuck it in underneath the cork, and that would push up there and make the super elevation. It was quick, it was easy, it was inexpensive. Then after you ballast the track and paint the sides of the rail, works out just fine. So there again, that's another little idea. Might be pretty decent for some of you to super elevate your curves with. And our next tip from the old timer is holders for your controllers. These are handy. They're great walk-arounds. The new DCC ones, they're fantastic also. And I got to thinking, well, it'd be nice to have something convenient to hold those. Again, I'm not saying you shouldn't go to your hobby shop, because you should, but you go to the hobby shop and you can get these commercially made holders, and they're pretty expensive. Here's what I've used. Being in the funeral business here, we have a lot of these. These are embalming fluid bottles, and we would throw them away. They would just be discarded. Recycled, of course, because they're plastic. But I would take these and cut them out and just hang them, and they make a perfect, like a little holder for controllers. If your controller's wider, you can cut out the side, custom make them a little bit, and then put a bigger controller in, mount it sideways. But there again, it's something that we just more or less took for granted, and it was disposed of. And with this crazy idea, it works out for model railroading to hang up your controllers. This next little tip from the old timer was done by a friend of mine, the late Wally Green. Wally was a buddy, and he was into electronics. He loved electronics. Well, maybe you've noticed my signals. They operate, and that's due to Wally. He would make these. He'd take a inexpensive signal. You can get a package of these at the hobby store. I think 4 of them, and they had the little plastic red and greens you put in the back. Well, Wally would take those. Then he'd go to Radio Shack, and he would get LEDs, red and a green one, and he would solder them back together on the back, and then he would just put them right in, and he'd make the wires come down the back ladder, and when it was painted black, it turned out really well. It's about the right height size. It's not overbearing or bigger than the train, and they're just positive red and green throw by a dispatcher up in the dispatcher room. So anyway, those are a way that you can come up with some pretty nice looking signals and not a lot of expense. Next little tip from the old timer, I found that I was going to need a lot of retaining wall. And the room is 54 feet long, and both walls have a higher level set of tracks coming down to the tracks at 0 elevation. So I was going to need to make some retaining wall. Went down to a friend of mine and got some heavy cardstock. There's a piece of it here. and it was in bigger pieces, and so I measured what I needed, and I just put it up there, hot glue gunned it up there, and then I went along the top with another piece, and at the joints a piece, and then I painted it auto primer gray, and dusted in some flat black, and that's what turned out to be my retaining wall from looks like poured concrete wall. Then I came along and I thought, well, it'd be nice to have weep holes in the wall where there's water running out. And I found that if you take and draw or paint the drainage first, and then take black construction paper and a regular paper punch out the hole and put it at the top of the drainage you painted, it was a lot easier doing it that way than putting the hole on the wall and then trying to paint exactly under it. So that was kind of the way I came up with the idea for concrete retaining walls. And I guess my last tip from the old timer was my backdrops up on the walls. I painted kind of a grayish blue, because Ohio, you know, if you have Montana skies, they're beautiful, but Ohio's kind of just usually a gray sky. Well, these folks from over at Pennsylvania make these backdrops, and they're fantastic. And I thought, well, I just really didn't like their blue. I thought it was too blue. So anyway, I took their backdrops and I cut their blue sky off, and then over on my big city, that's the same two backdrops repeated 3 times. I just cut the tops of the buildings off to make them look entirely different over there. And this piece that I held up was one of the countrysides. And I've got several small towns out in the countryside, and I put 2 together with a few buildings in front, and it makes it look like different backdrops. It's actually the same one, which worked out pretty well for me. So I hope you enjoyed a few little tips. Hope they help you, and I hope all of Will's friends enjoy the video. And again, this is the greatest hobby in the world. Good luck to you.